Hello world, it's Dave again, and I got another I guess we'll call it like a random blog video. I've got a few other emails that I need to catch up on and answer, but they just were pretty short, concise questions, so it wouldn't be exactly worth making a whole video on. So I'm just going to talk about life generally, a little bit of advice from my experience in the last little over a year now, something that was on kind of the forefront of my mind. Something it's a topic like a lot of people talk about is just basically when you're in a foreign country and you're going to be if you're sick. Now I've once last summer. Actually, I should preface this all with the fact that if you come to Japan and you are not used to an incredibly warm summer, then that's something that you should be very aware of when you come to Japan. Because when you come to Japan, not only is it incredibly hot, but it's humid. Now, I come from the balmy west coast of Canada where, we might get a day that's like 30 or 31, but it's not really getting much higher than that. And because you're right next to the ocean, you're cooled. We get a lot of rain, but our summers are really, really beautiful. And I've also lived there for years and years and years, so obviously I'm used to all the bacteria and stuff like that. But it's like this combo that hits you when you come to Japan, and it's hot and it's humid, and a lot of people aren't necessarily ready for that. And so there's all sorts of bizarre ailments that are going to get you when you hit the summertime. And I've got hit by a few of them, and I think I was pretty good about it. I wasn't good about it last summer, but my advice to people when they're here is just to, if you suspect something, I'm not suggesting that you be a hypochondriac. I think that's the word. Overly obsessed with your health, basically. But if you do feel like there's something that's starting to get to you, say you got a little itchy, say your throat hurts, something like that, don't let the intimidation factor when you might still be learning the language prevent you from going into the hospital, because I assure you that the time spent as that thing, whatever it is, grows worse for you will be far, far worse than the kind of semi-resistance you might have to going in and seeing somebody that you don't necessarily know how to speak the language that well of, and then the huge wave of relief that's going to hit you to have dealt with the problem efficiently and to be able to move beyond it as soon as possible. I'm just like, I fell victim to it a little bit. I was like, I don't want to go to the doctors. But then, of course, it's far, far worse in your head than it actually is in reality. When I went into the closest city near me to go and speak to the doctor because my throat hurt, they actually had a doctor there who spoke incredibly good English, and he was working on French. So it was no problem to speak to him and get things resolved. And even if not, you can find your way through it. It's a little more difficult, but at the very worst case scenario, your company would or should provide you with a guide to go with you to be able to speak for you. That's like worst case scenario if the doctor there doesn't already speak the language. But I implore you, if you do start to have an issue, what I had was basically strep throat. And I've seen it before. I've had it in Canada once or twice, 3 times in the course of my life. So I kind of knew it when it was coming. And I knew that I should just go in and get it. But it was such a brutal case that I had that I was trying out new antibiotics on it. And when in the past I've had this, it usually clears up in a day or two with antibiotics. So it showed just how important it was that I did go and nip the thing in the bud, because it would have been, it's already been a nightmare. I like to go to the gym and be physically active, do all these things. I like to push myself. And it was from the 14th of last month of June that I had this thing. And I dealt with it on the weekend that it started to show up. And it is now the 14th of the following month. So I've almost been dealing with this for over a month. Of course, it didn't help. Like I say, it's humid and hot. And so I ended up getting a summer cold. I never get colds in the summer, but I get them here in Japan, and that's just finally clearing up. So I got strep throat, I got a cold. It's just one thing after the other. I know some people get like itchy with heat rashes, all kinds of stuff. I don't mean to terrify you. Some people get through it no problem. Some people get through the summer here without having any issue whatsoever, and more power to them. I'm just saying a lot of people come here and don't necessarily have the experience in a hotter, more humid climate and they can fall victim to it pretty fast. So that was something I had on my mind. It has almost been preventing me from making videos because I've just been so out of it. I've just been trying to deal with that one thing first, and while I was dealing with it, I don't really have the energy to get on here and talk about what things are doing, and as well, I don't really have a great positive slant to what I'm going to talk about. You know, I don't want to come on here and just bitch and complain about being sick at the time, so it's really discouraging to whatever creative project that you might be working on to allow it to linger, you know, whatever that might be. I got this YouTube thing, but you know, if you're trying to do anything, it's going to distract you when you're sick here. So nip it in the bud. Go see a doctor. Don't avoid it because it feels that little bit uncomfortable and you're just like, oh, I don't want to speak to somebody when I don't know the language. You'll get to the end of it, and like I say, waves, oceans of relief that you'll feel to have dealt with it. So that out of the way, just talking about being sick in Japan, and how you should deal with that, which is in one way, and that's right away. What are some other exciting things? I'm heading back to Canada now on the 19th. I'm so excited. I'm so very excited. When I left, you know, there's all these people, like I had this thing where I wanted to leave because I wanted to do certain things with my life. But I didn't want to leave angry. Let's put it this way. You don't want to leave where you're going to escape something, because often that means, I guess it depends on the type of escape. I'm gonna sort this out. I'm gonna make this coherent. If you leave because you personally are in a shitty place, it's not necessarily a new place that's going to make you happy. Usually that sort of thing needs to be sorted out beforehand. I guess that's what I mean to say, is that you cannot go to some other place if you are in a bad headspace and immediately assume it's the cure. Changing things up in your life is a useful tool, but assuming that it's the fix-all to everything you might experience in your life is a bad idea. You know, putting all your eggs in that one basket, because if you come here and things are generally really shitty and your life isn't that good and you haven't been able to change your perspective about that, then it's not so likely that when you come here into a very demanding job and trying to acclimatize to a situation that's very, very challenging, you know, living in another country, learning another language, all these things, it's just going to probably actually compound that thing that you're already dealing with. So you want to come over to semi-even keel is what I'm trying to say. But beyond that, you don't want to be missing things too much or too little. Here's what I'm basically saying is when I've left, you know, people said, don't you miss home? And I always said to them, I do, but in the best way. And the best way, I think, is when there's a little sadness when you think about all the people that you've left behind and missed, but it's not overwhelming. And I take that to be an indicator of the fact that you had something to leave behind that you care about. That should, if you leave, this is also comforting for people to come over and they're like, oh, I really miss home. You should take that as a good sign that you came from a place that you actually appreciate. I'd almost be a little bit worried if I came here and there was absolutely nothing in what I left behind that I missed, because that meant there was nothing in my previous life that I enjoyed. Maybe I'm speaking a little too blatantly. Somebody could comment and correct me and send me hateful, zealous emails or whatever. It doesn't matter. But that's a cool thing. That's what I felt, is that I've really loved being here. And people are like, oh, are you in a rush to get back? I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not in a rush to get back. But I do miss people, and I'm really excited to go back. And it meant that I left behind people that I really do care about. So I'm going to be going back. I'm going to be going to cabins. I'm going to just be, I swear, I don't need anything. I don't need to party. I don't need to do anything, although that will be fun. But I was talking to my other buddy on Vancouver Island, and I was just saying, you know, it's fun to talk about all the abuses and excess that I'll indulge in when I go home. But really, that's the best sign of being excited to go someplace, is you don't need anything to happen when you're there. You know, I could just go back, grab a coffee in the morning, and walk around Vancouver, and it'd just be one of the best days I've spent in my entire life. And it's so crazy to think that simple familiarity could be something that you absolutely love. You know, I guess that's an advantage of leaving behind the familiar, is that, you know, song as old as time is that contrast creates appreciation, you know. So the grass is always greener, all these little cliches that you can employ to talk about this idea, where I'm just like, man, being away from a place so long really makes you appreciate the things that you enjoyed in it, even if they're as simple as just walking around downtown Vancouver with a coffee, even if it's just that surrounding you is an abundance of the ability to speak your own language. I really like Japanese. I've dedicated myself to learning the language and have had greater and lesser success with it depending on the day, but wow, do I really appreciate that you could walk into any store, speak to any person, and they would know what you're saying, and you wouldn't have to battle. And not only could you communicate, you can communicate in a really in-depth, rich way. You know, you can make subtle jokes with people. You can just, I guess that's the thing, is you go and leave a place and you go to learn another language, you really, that is a whole part of learning another language, is appreciating your own. So I'm just so excited for that. My brothers, I have 2 older brothers, and they've had nieces and nephews for me to meet. So the family has grown, and I'm really excited for that. It's kind of the Jameson family curse, is that there's always been boys. Like my mom, there's 3 boys. My middle brother had 2 kids, and then there's 2 kids, and that's 2 more boys. And so it was left to my eldest to see if we could actually get a little more feminine qualities into the family, and he pulled it off. And it's often joked that it would be easier to draw blood from a stone than to get my eldest brother to shed a tear. And so I think with this daughter, he's got his balancing influence, you know. So I'm really excited to go see her. You know, that's going to be great. Got a whole bunch of omiyage for everybody, a bunch of souvenirs. I think that's really exciting, the gift giving. Finally in a position to give people some gifts, and some interesting gifts, some not so interesting. Booze is really cheap here. I've made videos dedicated to that, and I just couldn't resist. I was like, all these booze lovers back home, I can get them everything for half price, so you can get ridiculously good stuff at like a fraction of the cost, which is really good. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, so camping, cabin trips, giving presents, seeing nieces and nephews, speaking my own language. You know, I got like 12 hours of flying, and I swear it's gonna feel like 5 minutes. I'm gonna be on there. I'm just gonna be too excited to be going home. And I'll make videos when I'm there. I think I'll even try and make some attempt. I know I always do this. You see this room, and that's all you ever see. But maybe when I'm there, I try and get a few more videos of the places that I'm at. You can see a little bit of downtown Vancouver. I'll be going out to some cabins, obviously. I'll be over on the island, so there'll be updates with that. It should be kind of interesting. Yeah, so that's it. You know, I don't want this video to drag. Doesn't need to be a long video. The most important thing, I was just thinking about coming out of this sickness. I was like, tell people to not waste their time on fear, and get out to the hospital, get out to the doctor, and go and see people if you end up with one of these very typical summer sadnesses. And you'll be in all the better shape for it. So that's it. I'm gonna make some more videos now that I'm actually in good health, and as I approach, make like countdown videos to Saturday. Oh man, I'm excited. It's gonna be awesome. Alright, yeah, so that's it. If you have any questions about teaching in Japan, I promise the people who are checking this video out who've sent me an email that I will be responding to you shortly. For all the reasons I've mentioned, I hadn't done so far, but if people watching this have questions, I always post my email address down below. Happy to answer them. I work for Interact. I answer questions about Interact, about other companies, and everything here and in between teaching and living in Japan. Any life questions, you just want some advice, ask Dave. I'll help you out. Alright, so yeah, until we meet again next time, world, thanks for tripping with Dave. Like, subscribe, share, and until we meet again next time, ciao for now.